discuss the properties pane now. Of course, it's found wherever you put the pane in your interface. If you don't have the pane up, or any pane for that matter, up in the interface, you can always find it from View and Windows, and you can check or uncheck all the ones you want to see. Alright, and it's up to you how you configure Altia Design. I personally find it laid out very well like this, with the tools, info, animation, stimulus, properties, and connections here, the find pane, which I leave up, and the navigator having the entire right hand vertical size of the application on the right hand column. That's just, personal preference for me, but I'm sure you'll find your best suited configuration when you start using it for yourself. But back to the properties pane. Of course, with nothing selected, no objects, it is blank. So let's go ahead and insert something that has a few properties. And our buttons in the model library here, in the model libraries, we'll be seeing some updates as well. So if this doesn't look the same, that's no problem. But I just needed something that had some properties. You can see now when you have a object selected that it has some properties if it's been built onto the object. Now if you built object yourself, you may have to create properties, and I'll briefly show just one example of that in a little bit. But I just want to talk about what is a property and what can you use a property for. Okay, so let's just, for example, take this show label property and set it to yes. Now what that is actually done, it hasn't really added anything to the object or created anything, but what it's done is afforded at design time. Let me expand this out just a little bit here. I guess I don't really need to do that. I can probably see everything I need. So anyway, we've got these animations on this object, right? And one of those animations happens to be called push name show. And it is really just a show hide animation for the name of the button. If I manually changed the value of that animation, which is a show hide animation, I can affect it individually. And if I double click to focus into this object and select just that guy, you can see that yes, that's indeed where he belongs. He's actually on that object, okay? And it's actually focused in one more group level. That animation is defined on this deck here, and it's really just a deck card animation, with card 0 being blank. Of course, we don't see any card 0 there, and card 1 containing the name. So let's focus out to the top real quick and kind of reiterate this concept. All I'm doing by changing this value from 0 to 1 is showing or hiding a card of a deck. Properties don't add anything to the object. They just afford an easy panel to make changes such as those things. And see how this says no and yes? That's really just because of the property being told to display 1 and 0 as yes and no. So properties are just more of a human readable panel or pane for you to change an object at design time without having to go into the animation editor and find out which animation that might be and manually change the value. Properties give you and your users of, say you build a object and you want to pass it on to other members of your team, if you build on some properties, they can quickly tweak that object. And let's just take those tweaks a little further. If I copy and paste this button and I say that the label color is not black, but say I could type in FF here or go choose a color, but I just changed it to 00255, so solid blue. And if I copy and paste that, it preserves it. So all the tweaks you make in properties, you can actually then, for example, if I made this kind of dark blue, right? It's almost black, but that doesn't matter. You can see that properties can change the little copies of objects, and if you copy and paste them, they persist. All right. So again, they don't add anything new to the object, but a property lets you modify animations that do exist on an object in a very easy and accessible way from the properties panel. Alright, so I told you I would show you how to create a property, and that's done like this. If you draw, let's just call it we'll leave it a rectangle actually, just for this example. That's all we need. And I'll just group it because I'm going to put properties on the group level. So I want to go to the home ribbon and click group just so you can see it. Also though, as you can see from the pop-up, the keyboard shortcut is Control G. So I've just grouped that rectangle, and I can just say add custom property. For this, I will just call it color or my color. It's you know, up to you what you want to call that. Description, you can say this will change the color. Again, just descriptive. Okay, and then to do a color property, I just choose not animation stimulus timer, but of course color, and then it already knows that it's going to affect within this group. It says, hey, I can change the color of the rectangle you've got, and its ID is 31. Yep, that's exactly what I want. I could change this to say no, apply the color to the group instead, so that if I have any other child objects that can change color in this group, they would inherit this color. But really, I'm okay with just changing the color of the rectangle for it right now. And I simply choose fill color or outline color, and then I click define. All right, so I've got a property for that now. Now, if I click OK, you see it show up here, and just like before in the other guy, I have access to now change these values. I'll just use FF as I did before, but now I'm changing the color of the box without having to go and actually do it manually, because I created a property to do so. All right, so creating properties is really that simple. You add them to your objects. Now, for things like properties that change cards of a deck and things like that, let's go ahead and select that push button guy and look at him real quick. And his property that shows and hides this label, I right click and I just say edit property. You can see that it's actually just affecting not only the value, the current value, but also the initial state. This is up to you. You can define properties with multiple specifications, but what this does is it changes the value now, and it also sets the initial value, so when you start up, it preserves that value that you chose in the property. All right, but it was just done by selecting the animation for the drop down, choosing initial, clicking define, and also doing the same thing for value. Now, why does it say yes, no versus 1, 0? Isn't that just a deck card value, card 0 and card 1, when we were changing it in the animation editor? The answer is yes, but because property input was changed to a drop down with specified value, we were able to remap 0 and 1 to yes and no, so it shows up in a little bit more human readable form here in the properties pane. So again, just to recap, properties are used to quickly access animations that already exist on an object and afford you a quick configurable tweak pane. We'll call it a tweaker pane or a tweak pane, but it's really just properties on the objects to make those quick tweaks at any given time without having to find the animation name, manually change its value, and so on. So that's properties in a quick review.